Y'all know about Di Tomaso, right? Like that one car brand that did that one car, you know what I mean? Di Tomaso was one hell of a company in some ways, and in other ways, not so much. I mean, the identity of the company itself is confusing as hell. Their brand logo is distinctly not Italian. Why does an Italian brand have Argentinian branding? Why does anybody remember who they are? Did they fail? And what the hell are they doing with that engine? Welcome to the Archives, and yes, I am changing the name because Archives rolls better off the tongue. I was stupid. A collection of videos of me talking about forgotten, discontinued, and defunct pieces of car history to spread the joy and pain of knowing about what happened to these critical pieces of car history. Not only is it nostalgic or just cool to look back on these once global brands and ideas, but it's important to make sure they aren't forgotten, because eventually, if we stop talking about them one day, they will be. To talk about Di Tomaso, the company, we gotta talk about Di Tomaso, the guy. Alejandro Di Tomaso was born in Argentina to Italian descent parents. His family was pretty influential in the country, but he eventually had to flee to Italy in 1955 after he was implicated in a plot to overthrow President Juan Perón, who was an interesting guy in his own right. He settled in Medina, which almost automatically meant that he had to build cars, because, like, what the fuck else do you do in Medina? And in 1957, ended up marrying Isabel Haskell, the daughter of one of the co-founders of GM. She was also a racing driver, which is so fucking cool, bro. Di Tomaso himself raced in F1, although not that successfully. He raced for Oscar, Maserati, which are just... they're the same thing, I'm gonna be honest. They're the exact same thing. And Ferrari in the late 50s. His highest finish was 9th. Grids were like, I don't know, 30 people. He did pretty good. No points though. Sorry, I have to do a side note. If my wife was racing alongside me, bro, my life would be complete, my nigga. Like, I'd have won the lottery before I even created a multi-million-dollar supercar company. Anyways, the both of them decided to use their racing history somewhere other than the track, and the company Di Tomaso was founded by the both of them in 1959. Originally, Di Tomaso aimed to be a prototype racing company, but their first ever car wasn't a race car. I'll talk about it a little later, but I figured I might as well speak about the early racing prototypes because I'm going to be honest, it should only take about a minute to go over them. Most of them are completely irrelevant and not useful to this video, like, at all. The P70, also known as the Ghia Di Tomaso, which set up Di Tomaso and Ghia's working relationship, Ghia is a coach building company by the way, was meant to be a GT car. I don't know about you, that doesn't look anything like a GT car. It participated in one major race and didn't finish. The other important prototype they made, the Sport 2000, didn't ever take to a racetrack and is now owned by some rich guy who will likely never even put it on asphalt ever again. Other than those two sports cars, Di Tomaso also tried getting into F1 in the early 60s with a model called the 801. It has almost no info about it other than it maybe had 200 horsepower and it was dog shit. Skipping ahead a little bit in time, Di Tomaso partnered with Frank Williams, aka Williams, in 1970 to make the Di Tomaso 505. This one also sucked, and it killed a guy. So there, Di Tomaso's racing history, done. Now, going all the way back in time to Di Tomaso's first ever actual model in 1963, the Di Tomaso Vallelunga is what kicked all of this off. Honestly, the Vallelunga sounds like a pretty cool car to drive. I don't know about owning it, but keeping with the whole idea of wanting to be a racing company, the car was built to basically be a road-going race car. Mid-engined, mid-mounted transmission, with double wishbones at the front, multi-link at the rear. It even had radials in the 60s. All of that, plus the engine, which was a four-banger taken out of a Ford Cortina, which made 104 horsepower, weighed only 1,600 pounds. I suspect the use of magnesium and fiberglass, which became the standard for Di Tomaso, might have had something to do with that, although I am not a scientist. Throughout its production, the company that built the body itself switched from Fisore to Ghia, and other than that, there's not much else to say about it. It's what you expect from a startup Italian sports and supercar company. Questionable build quality, terrible ride, but maybe the most beautiful thing within a 50-mile radius anywhere in the world. It was so pretty, in fact, that a Vallelunga was gifted to the Museum of Modern Art in New York to be put on display. That is the most textbook start to an Italian car company ever. But trust me, from here on out, Di Tomaso wanes from the stereotypical Italian path. Partially. The Di Tomaso Mangusta. the car you literally only know from Gran Turismo 7. As did I until I started working on this video. But little did I know how perfectly the game encapsulated it. The Mangusta, which started being manufactured in 1966, was the start of a bunch of new trends Di Tomaso would follow until the end. The biggest trend being the switch from using European to American engines. They were cheap, they were easy to tune, they were even easier to repair, and they also had some kick behind them. The oil crisis wasn't really fucking people up yet, so yippee! Designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro himself, the greatest car designer of the century, literally trademarked, who was working at Ghia and also had a hand in designing every one of the Di Tomaso models before, the Mangusta looks so pretty, man. I mean, look, I'd say it's an acquired taste. If you don't like cars, you don't like the Mangusta. Simple as that. Maybe it needs some bigger wheels, slightly wider wheels, but god damn is it pretty, man. The name Mangusta, as with everything Italian ever, trust me, I'd know, has quite a story behind it. Mangusta means mongoose in whatever dialect of Italian Di Tomaso spoke, and mongooses are literally only cool because they eat snakes, like black mambas, pythons, and most famously, cobras. Carroll Shelby, you know the guy, you love the guy, and if you're Ferrari, you visit his grave every year to spit on it because he shit on them that bad. With Di Tomaso utilizing Ford engines from the very start, Di Tomaso, the guy, had a pretty solid working relationship with Ford and especially their performance programs, of which the Shelby brand and Shelby himself were a part of. To make a short story even shorter, Shelby and Di Tomaso, the guys, agreed to cooperatively build a Can-Am car. One thing leads to another, typical Italian supercar shit happens, and Di Tomaso can't deliver on time. So Carroll backs out of the agreement, leaving Di Tomaso, the guy, and the company hanging, and went to go build some other car. It was probably irrelevant. Just another 60s racing prototype. Holy shit! This next part is all speculation and rumors, but Di Tomaso, the guy, was pretty upset about all this. As a form of revenge, he named his next car the Mongoose as a jab to Shelby and the Shelby Cobra. With that story out the way, the Mangusta was basically titled the Cobra Killer. So how good of a car was not good at all? It wasn't entirely a negative affair. Honestly, it was quite good for a mid-century Italian supercar. It was cheap because it used a 302 small block that made 230 horsepower. It looked... oh, how do I word this? It looked fuckable. I'm sorry, I can't use any other words. And it actually sold, unlike the Vallelunga. However, the original prototypes featured the super cool 289 high-power small blocks that made over 300 horsepower. In the 60s, the production models got the most basic 302 available. The weight distribution was 44/56 front to rear, which made it incredibly, stupendously awful to drive. Furthermore, it had low ground clearance, so that and the weight distribution combined led to the car oversteering under braking because the rear would shift so much. But the second you let off the brakes, the front wheels got light, which led to massive understeer, consecutively right after the oversteer. The interior was cramped, no one over 6 foot could reportedly even get in the car, let alone sit inside of it, and Italian build quality. But we can ignore all that. The car was successful. The market of 5'11" people who wanted an Italian supercar but didn't have Italian supercar money but still had enough money to buy a supercar was surprisingly bigger than you thought back then. Going back to trends that started from the Mangusta, Di Tomaso found their niche with this thing, which they would use subsequently for their next car to great success: appeal to the Americans. Di Tomaso utilized legal loopholes to import their cars and have them be sold in the US without even passing US safety standards, which meant the headlights were too low,
which is bullshit,
and the car had no seat belts.
Okay, maybe that's a little less bullshit.
Eventually, that loophole was closed and they were mandated to have pop-up headlights, which made the car look very concerned. Di Tomaso had entered the American market and they actually built over 400 Mangustas. With the basis laid for Di Tomaso now, they had to make sure their next car was a hit. The Pantera, the most commercially, culturally, sportingly successful car in the company's history. Literally the only reason why you know this brand at all before late 2025, I should say. Ghia's American division designed the thing, and immediately it had a better base than the Mangusta because it had a monocoque chassis design, which made it sturdier, lighter, safer, and more stable than the Mangusta. The strategy of appealing to the Americans was in full effect for the Pantera, as Di Tomaso and Ford inked a deal to sell Panteras in Lincoln Mercury dealerships. Not only was it immediately off to a better start than the Mangusta, this is all before talking about the performance. Ford 351 Cleveland engines that made 330 horsepower rounded all of that out. In just 1 year, over 1,000 units were imported and sold in the States, meaning it was over twice as successful as the Mangusta, over its entire time on sale. There were so many models of Pantera, but they all follow chronological order, so I'll only say the notable ones. The Pantera L was an updated version that had lower power outputs but was better suited to the American market. And the Pantera GT5 was the absolute best Pantera, I don't care what anybody says. It was introduced in 1980 and it was a better equipped Pantera GTS, which was the previous generation. In 1975, the deal between Ford and Tomaso ended, so now Tomaso was just running off of gray market importers and renowned in America. They also needed to get their Cleveland engines from Australia, and when that supply ran out, they got replaced by 351 Windsors. The Pantera GT5S was the big steel flare, like 80s. It was introduced in 85. It's the 80s supercar. That's probably what you think of when you think of a Pantera. Finally, the last model of Pantera, the Pantera 90 SI, had a brand new, in quotes, 302 engine with EFI, better internals and manifolds, and brakes that were shared with the F40. Wait, hold on. Did I forget I added this? No way. Oh my god. They actually had F40 brakes. Oh my god. Technically, the Pantera 90 is the most desirable model of Pantera, but personally, nothing beats the GT5. So beyond the fact that they somehow managed to manufacture this thing from 1971 all the way until the Pantera 90 in 1990, it was actually surprisingly successful in motorsport. The Group 3 Pantera raced for 12 years and was so successful at the national level, because that's where most Group 3 races were held, that it prompted Porsche to actually hurry up their production of the 911 Carrera and RSR race cars. In the much more popular Group 4, Tomaso had actually won 3 races in the FIA European GT Championship, as well as appearing at a couple World Sports Car Championship races and Le Mans in 1972. But they were competing against Porsche, who were in good graces with race organizers, and convinced them to basically limit the Pantera by only allowing them to use street brakes and adding weight penalties. They were so scared of the Pantera that they had to bitch and moan about it to organizers to prevent it from winning. Typical. Red Bull! The Group 5 Pantera was awful. I'm not gonna waste my breath talking about it. It wasn't very good. Overall, the Pantera was the most influential model Tomaso ever made. It was successful in legitimizing the brand and established them as an actual player from the Medina market. The problem? They were never able to capitalize on it. They made some saloon cars in the 70s trying to expand outwards, such as the Deauville. That wasn't very good. The final car that Alejandro Tomaso ever personally saw to was called the Guara, and it was just an Italian Miata with a V8 in the front. Did have the BMW M40 V8s. Go watch 337 Speeds video on those. Fire, but they only made like 50 of them. And in 2003, Alejandro Tomaso passed away. A year later, Tomaso was liquidated. They had some models in the works before they did get liquidated, but the guy who bought the company ended up being some tax evading son of a bitch, so that sounds about right. The company was dormant, dead in the water, until 2019. After being bought out by a Chinese investment firm, the P72 concept car was shown at Goodwood in 2019. No one knew whether or not it would ever truly exist, but it did. It got delayed a bunch, but hey, it started production in 2024 and they're aiming to make 72 models. It looks genuinely beautiful. It's powered by a Coyote V8 and it weighs nothing. Awesome car. But Tomaso's been in the news recently for another reason. Yeah, please, Tomaso, listen, if you're watching this video, just send me a Pantera GT5, send me a P900, please. In 2022, the prototype for the Tomaso P900 was built and said to be ready for production by late 2024. It wasn't. Only in late 2025, early 2026 was the P900 fully unveiled, showing its even more beautiful design than the P72, and more critically, either a Judd V10
Holy shit!
or a completely bespoke, original design, beautiful looking V12 that'll rev up to 12,300 RPM.
I'm about to blow.
With the P72 and P900, Tomaso is unrecognizable to the brand it used to be back then, and that's where we're at right now. This video was longer than it should have been, so I'm gonna have to answer this question quick. Why did Tomaso fail? To keep it short and sweet, they were Italian. Italian sports and supercar companies are notorious for their lack of reliability, inconsistent production, commercial failure, and a little bit of hard-headedness. Di Tomaso was exceptional, strangely enough, as the 70s saw all the other Italian sports and supercar manufacturers literally drowning in water from these issues. Di Tomaso thrived off the Pantera being cheaper than all of those companies' highest-end models, while still looking the part, somewhat playing the part, and actually being comfortable to drive for a supercar. But when they stagnated with it and made it for 20 years, they eventually lost their market. After Alejandro Di Tomaso's death in 2003, the company had no reason to exist. The bounce back with two of some of the greatest looking cars I've ever seen in my life is nice and all, but they aren't really Di Tomaso's. They aren't following the formula Di Tomaso's most successful models followed, the affordable supercar. They've just become another supercar company. Now, if they keep up with the retro modern design language thing, then they will build a completely new identity and it'll likely be very successful, but it'll be a damn shame that the world will never get a car like the Pantera ever again. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Have a good day, night, morning, afternoon, whatever. You know how it goes. Just have a good one, man. Have a good one.
Telling you, I fucked on your bitch, man. I fucked up on your bitch. I'm telling you, I fucked on your bitch, man. I fucked up on your bitch, yeah.
So what's up?
I don't know. What's up with you?